Hello, everyone, and welcome to the National Black MBA Association's Wednesday webinar series. Thank you for joining us. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to acquaint you with a few features of this web event technology. At any time, you may adjust your audio using computer volume settings. On the right-hand side of your screen, you will see a Q&A window. To submit a question, type your question in the small text box at the bottom, and when finished, click the Send button. You may do this at any time during the program. All questions that you submit are only seen by today's presenters. Questions will be responded to in the order in which they are received and will be addressed at the end of the presentation. However, please note that due to time constraints, our speakers may not be able to respond to all questions submitted. At this time, I would like to introduce our speaker, Stacy Franklin. Stacy Franklin is the owner of ThriveWorks Counseling, Coaching, and Consulting in Peachtree City, Georgia, and is a nationally certified and licensed psychotherapist. Stacy received her Master's of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling from Mercer University and her Bachelor of Arts degree in Sociology, focusing on race and urban relations, from Georgia State University. She earned her graduate certification as a certified diversity professional and advanced practitioner from Cornell University and holds a strategic professional of human resources certification. In addition, Stacy is a licensed professional counselor for the state of Georgia. Welcome, Ms. Franklin.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining this afternoon. I am very excited to be presenting today, and I do not take it lightly that you are taking this hour out of your day. So I am going to stick with what I know works, which is I am going to do my best to be as bold, as brilliant, but also as brief so that I can be gone. I do not want to take up too much of your time, so we will make sure that we are starting on time and we are ending on time. So thank you again for joining. Thank you again for that introduction. It actually will allow us to go right past this first introduction slide because it's already been said. And I'm trying to advance slides here. Hold on. Okay. So I'm just going to skip right over this. It's already been said. I will say, in addition to that, I am also married with 3 amazing children and 4 amazing grandchildren. That bio just sounded like there was a lot going on, but I will tell you that it's all very, very related. If I were to summarize this into 1 or 2 sentences, I would say that I really focus on helping others to realize their potential. Whether it's through counseling or coaching, whether it's through consulting, or whether it's through mediation, which really is all about helping people to identify what their needs are and to get the very best possible result. So, again, thank you. About Access Counseling, Coaching, and Consulting, LLC. The counseling side of my business is actually, we do business as ThriveWorks Counseling and Coaching here in Peachtree City, and we provide very high-level and premium assessments. We do individual and group as well as couple therapy and coaching services, and we work with individuals from ages 5 to 95. So there are 8 of us here in this practice. And all are very licensed and very experienced clinicians. In terms of consulting services, we really focus on working with businesses, whether it's corporations, small businesses, government or nonprofit agencies, to really bring new perspective to them, bring new insights to them, and specifically in the areas of human resources, diversity and change management, as well as leadership development. So our topic today is exciting, and it's really near and dear to my heart because I consider myself a recovering superwoman, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But the term Superwoman syndrome, while we've heard it in song lyrics and we've seen reference to it in different academic sites. It really was coined and made popular in 1984 by the author Marjorie Shavitz in her book, The Superwoman Syndrome. And it really was addressing the pressures, the demands on women, but taking it more from a Western cultural perspective and the demands that they had to perform and to perform really well in multiple roles. It was addressing the women who were really just trying to do it all. And her book really focused on prioritization, right? So how do you prioritize what's most important and then do those things well? I like to point out that she talks about balance in her book, but balance and sacrifice are very different. Striving for balance, that is saying that I'm still going to try to do it all. I just would like to balance the energy that I put into it versus some women who, rightfully so, have made decisions to actually sacrifice. So they may sacrifice career for family at a particular time in their life or family for career. And the premise there is that, so I'm not going to try to do it all. I am going to forgo one area of my life for a period of time in order to focus and really devote more time to another area of my life. But that is not the case for the Superwoman, and that certainly is not the case for the Black Superwoman. And I'll tell you, there's just something that's really unique and special, something just, look at this picture, something fierce about the Black Superwoman. But there's also something very troubling about it. And we're going to dive a little bit more into the psyche and into the behaviors of the Black Superwoman and the consequence and benefits of doing so. So to dive into the Superwoman syndrome from the Black woman's perspective, you really have to be ready to understand this from a social, cultural, economic, and historical context. And in preparing for this presentation, I was really just trying to decide, how much information was too much information from a historical context. And I really made the decision to just dive into it and to be able to provide you with information that you may or may not have, but you certainly should be sharing with others. Because when we talk about the Black Superwoman, you've really got to talk about it, and think about the psychological and the physical demands of African American women being rooted in the experience of slavery, and specifically the African American slavery experience, because it's unique in that it was forced. So the slavery was actually forced, the labor was actually forced, but we were also being forced into a very foreign culture. And how well we did those things, our survival really depended on it. So we've been doing multiple roles for a really long time, and if you think about it, going back to the slavery experience, physical labor was not that differentiated between women and men. Women were expected to, and you'll hear me use the word expected and obligated, but they were expected to and forced to be side by side with men, sun up to sundown in the fields or on the grounds. But in addition to that, they were taking care of their babies and nursing their babies and just, days after giving birth, having to return to the field and to domestic labor. And then they were also taking care of the extended kin and even non-kin, because children, once they became a certain age, would be sold off, and when those children arrived at their new plantation with new slave owners, they were automatically placed with the African American women to nurture and to provide for them and to care for them. They've been leading a family unit for forever because while there was certainly a value in the family unit, we know that they were forced into separation, and so oftentimes men would be uprooted and taken from that family unit, and so she became the head of the household and would have to, take on that role as well. And so in addition to nurturing her children and extended kin and non-kin and often trying to hold it together for men who were also broken. They were also had roles that they had to perform, for their masters and for their masters' wives, whether it was being sexually objectified and abused or whether it was being subjected to the thought that they were masculine, that they were to be bred for profit as property. So there have been some really tough and clearly multiple roles going on in the Black Superwoman's life for quite some time. The other thing that definitely differentiates the Black Superwoman from the Superwoman that was coined in 1984 by Chavez is you have to look at the intersectionality of race and of gender. And so the Black Superwoman actually has had to deal with and continues to deal with the oppression of being a woman and a woman in America, as well as the oppressing factors of being Black. And so you layer those two and you get the intersection that has to be acknowledged and addressed, yet there's not a lot of research that exists on this intersectionality. Not enough, for sure. So let's talk about the many constructs, right? So the many constructs of this phenomena, the Black Superwoman. There's the Sojourner Truth Syndrome. So I don't know if you all have heard of that, but really it was developed by Dr. Leah Mullings and really appropriately embodies the historical, the socio-political context that frame this phenomena of a Black woman and her life and her health. It really focuses on the behavioral perspective, right? So we talked a little bit about the different roles of, having to work beside men, having to be the caretaker, a community advocate, the person that tried to keep everyone together. And in Sojourner Truth, Ain't I a Woman speech, to the Ohio Women's Conference in 1851, she really lays it out, and she addresses the failure of both the women's suffrage movement, which was focused on predominantly white women, and their lack of rights and their suffering, but also really the failure also of the human and civil rights movement that focuses more on the experience of the Black man and fails to address the experience of the Black woman. And then you've got the Sisterella complex. And that really is putting a greater emphasis on more of the psychological characteristics, for the Black Superwoman, which would include things like the symptoms. And I say symptoms because we're not always as quick to diagnose or even accept a diagnose or understand diagnosis of things like depression and anxiety, and the internal distress that's really experienced by this Black Superwoman. And that experience is quieted via emotional suppression. And, like the character Cinderella, Sisterella she's just working tirelessly to be what others need her to be, and she's sacrificing, and she's the one that's taking care of everybody else's needs, and sacrificing her own needs for the needs of others. And I never did understand, like, what was Cinderella's issue that she just didn't get up and go off on those sisters and on, and on the evil stepmother. What in the world, made her feel so obliged to stay there and to take care of others? So when you look at it from that perspective, when there's just this very obvious and overt mistreatment, abuse, and being taken advantage of, it's easy to say, what my grandmother used to call the Idas, what Ida done. Ida told that stepsister this, or Ida told that stepmother that. But the truth is that we live in that space every day, but we don't recognize it in the same way. And oftentimes our guilt won't allow us to. So, how we see others and how we see ourselves has really been absorbed into our psyche. In fact, the sacrifice has been so great that oftentimes Sisterella, she doesn't even know to be still enough to identify the messages that she has internalized, the negative messages and the conflicting stereotypes about Black women, and how that has shown up in her life. And some of those stereotypes I know that you're already familiar with, that selfless, caretaking, the mammy stereotype, the hypersexual, objectified Jezebel, and that, tell it like it is, angry Black woman who has been stereotyped as being very emasculating. That's the sapphire stereotype. And like most stereotypes, or many stereotypes, they're imposed. They're not earned, but they're also very, very limiting and very psychologically debilitating. So, again, while from a historical context these stereotypes were imposed, we really continue to perpetuate these stereotypes, if you will, and through our media platforms, and honestly through modeling and the role modeling that we have received, we continue to perpetuate those stereotypes, and it's to the detriment of ourselves. It's to the detriment of our daughters, and so it's why I did take the time to try and give a little bit of context, a little bit of background from a socioeconomic and cultural perspective, because we got to educate ourselves. We got to educate our children, our men, and we have to use platforms like this to help bring a different level of understanding, right? And so it's why before I could get into the, okay, what's next portion of this presentation, it's why I have to say and give you the why not side of it. And then the strong Black woman schema, or oftentimes it's just the SBW schema, while it takes into account a lot of the same things that the Superwoman schema takes into account, I will say that they're both very rooted in psychological and behavioral characteristics. So it's combining the characteristics described in the other constructs, right? It creates really a more holistic representation of the strength that's displayed among Black women. And then furthermore, I would say that the strong Black woman, or the Black Superwoman schema, also really emphasizes the Black identity as a key characteristic, while Shavitz's Superwoman schema is just not as unique to the Black woman, as it would be to women of other and various ethnicities. So it's important that we kind of understand, where does this come from, and what are the different constructs? So, ain't I a superwoman? And I'm not sure why it's not showing up on here, but actually there is an X crossed through the title where it says super. And so let's talk a little bit about, and remember I said, hey, I'm going to talk about expectations and obligations because we get mixed messages. Of course, we all, if we follow the psychological needs that were described in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, yet we all want to be affirmed. We all want to have a need to nurture and to belong and to, become our best selves. But let's just talk about when it's an expectation and when it's an obligation and when the force behind it is not about us, but it is about meeting the expectation and the obligations of others. So when we talk about the characteristics, it's the expectation and the obligation to really manifest strength. How many times have we heard the saying, well, what doesn't kill you will make you stronger? Okay. It'll make you stronger until it makes you sick, and then it kills you, right? The obligation to manifest that strength and to really suppress emotions, the resistance to being vulnerable, to being and allowing yourself to be somewhat dependent on others that you can trust. The determination really to succeed even despite limited resources and, an obligation to help others when it means sacrificing self. Again, where is this coming from and where does that psyche begin? And it begins, again, it's been modeled for us. It's slavery and it was required of us. And then society continues and continues and continues to help, push those images and push those expectations to us. And if you think it doesn't show up in our lives, I want you to just think again. Authenticity, really is very, very central to our overall well-being. So, we are carrying these masks of generations before us, and the heaviness, the deepness of those masks will weigh us down. It shows up in our personal lives through emotional isolation, self-rejection, delayed or sometimes non-existent, in fact, oftentimes non-existent self-care. And it shows up in our relationships, whether those are intimate relationships, whether those are relationships with our family members, relationships in the community. It shows up in our relationships. And I work with women, African American women, all the time who, in their mind, all is well. But when you start to really peel the onion back, you see that there is a level of brokenness that manifests itself as a result of neglecting self-care. Needing to maintain this appearance of being able to not just do it all, but effortlessly do it all. It's a lot of pressure. And to ask for help is oftentimes it's considered a weakness. So what do? We don't ask. I was recently working with a client, and we were actually working on some professional development things. And I remember her sitting in here, and she was talking about, she's got a toddler, and a professional mom, married, the epitome of the black superwoman, if you will, just trying to do it all and trying to make it happen. And she always showed up to my sessions late, and I'd say, hey, okay, why are you late? What's going on? Oh, I was trying to do this, and then I need to finish this up at work, and then I was trying to, take a conference call on the way here, and it didn't end. And I have to stop her and say, but this is about you. Like, this is 1 hour out of the weekday that's just for you, and it's about you. But it's so natural for you to negotiate on your time versus negotiating in other space, in other people's on other people's time. And so she started talking about a Facebook group that she's actually on, and it's for working mothers. So it's not specific to African American working mothers, but it's for working mothers. And she just went on and on and on, and was just in this rant about how she's going to get off this Facebook group, because all these women do is they just whine and complain. And like, I just cannot stand a weak woman. And they're sitting here asking me questions about, on this Facebook group post about, well, how do you get your husband to take on 50-50, and complaining about things like, I didn't get 8 hours of sleep. And I'm just like, right, really? Okay, that is a luxury. Who does that? And so she's just really pissed at these women on this Facebook group who are, complaining about they're not getting their me time in. And so I'm listening to her accuse these women of being just like weak and entitled, and they're spoiled, whiny brats. And I waited on her to pause and to kind of get it off and get it out of her, out of her system. And so she's looking at me for my reaction, and I think she was pretty surprised that I really had to turn her conversation around and help her identify her current stress level, her current lack of self-care, and really relate it back to what she has internalized about what it means to ask for help, what it means to take care of yourself. I mean, because the truth is, who wouldn't make, good use of daily me time? Or why shouldn't we expect, spouses and extended kin and others to be, we talk about a village, but then when a village tries to step in and to provide that support, we feel guilty, or we feel really uncomfortable about accepting that support. And so it was interesting just to kind of see her step back and say, oh, I guess I didn't see those things as things that I was entitled to, and things that would be considered, self-care. So what we do is we really start to just tuck these emotions away, and we sweep them under the rug, and then we trip over them. And they show up, we think, or seemingly like out of nowhere, and they're disguised as irritability or resentment over, things that are safer to resent than our own health and our own self-care. And so, they show up usually in something as seemingly simple as, who left the cap off the milk? Well, the truth is that this really isn't about the cap off the milk. The truth is that it probably is about, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I'm irritable, and now you want me to do one more thing, like put the cap on the milk, right? But if we're not self-aware enough to understand, what am I really feeling? What is this really about? Then we just continue to trip over the same things that we've swept under the rug over and over again. And to administer any form of self-care, again, we're thinking about that as being very selfish. It's a luxury that starts to guilt us into a really very deep level of silence. I can use myself as an example. I remember that there were times when I would just speak really ill of women who, I thought were thinking they were too good to clean their own homes, and that had the audacity to hire a housekeeper, and I don't know, somewhere in my gut, it just felt like, as a Black woman. That's part of my role, and it's kind of being disrespectful to the role of a Black mother is, to have someone else come in and sort through your things and do things that are your responsibility. And so in my mind, I just was thinking, like, I just don't see that happening. So I really honestly would take pride in things like, how straight the lines were when I vacuumed my carpet. And, I get pretty intense if you tried to track over those lines before someone else got a chance to see them and validate, what a superwoman I was. And then when I did finally give in to I think it wasn't necessarily self-awareness then. Well, I know it wasn't self-awareness then. It was really more, as I grew in my profession and started to kind of do some of the status-seeking stuff. There were status-seeking expectations that as a professional woman, like you need to have a housekeeper, and you're not validated if you don't have a housekeeper. So that's how I wound up getting a housekeeper. But then I realized, well, darn, I guess it's okay not to do it all. I realized that, I actually felt better. I actually had more time to do other things that were a greater priority. But I'm going to tell you, I still felt so guilty, as though, it was a luxury, and a luxury of guilt, not a necessity, to have that kind of help. And so, what was not open for discussion was, meeting the expectation that my home, for then this family of 5 plus, a dog and company and teenagers and in and out, it needed to be spotless, because that's what good mothers, that's what, a superwoman's house would look like. It would not show any signs of being lived in, because it needs to look perfect, and it needs to look effortless, remember? And so, anything less than that would reveal vulnerability. It would reveal imperfections. So, I am a work in progress, and I will admit that I am a recovering superwoman. I still definitely find the value of, having occasional assistance in, keeping my house clean, but it's for me. It's for me. It's part of my self-care now. I don't clean for guests. As a matter of fact, we got guests coming over for Thanksgiving, and I'm not cleaning up for guests. I'm going to clean when they leave, because that's for me. That's for my peace of mind. And so, again, I am a work in progress, like I'm sure many of you are, or hopefully after this presentation will become. When women, when we talk about, relationships and how things show up in your relationships, when women are opposite of what the standards and societal ideals have been set for us, it can really negatively impact their ability to love themselves, to accept themselves. And it shows up in their ability to really attract and sustain healthy relationships. And so those relationships become toxic. If we don't love ourselves, then we begin to really scratch and claw for that external validation in our partner. And, in some way, in any way, we are looking to have that validation, so we start to act out what we think of ourselves, that those messages that we have suppressed start to show up. And a lot of times in those relationships with our partners, with our spouses, who may also not be very self-aware, by the way, that's a totally different webinar, but who may also not be self-aware, who may also be depleted and, and broken, we are looking for them to fix our brokenness, right? So the subconscious belief that, man, if I save him or her and, really negotiate with my non-negotiables, and show through my self-sacrificing that I can save him or her, then in turn, maybe they're going to come for me. And then when those expectations aren't met in those relationships, what do? We go and cement ourselves further behind this wall of insecurity and the emotional isolation, and further reject who we really are. And then we have a cycle, right? And so in our personal lives, and we'll talk a little bit more about, the now what's, but in our personal lives, there's no doubt about the fact that, wearing this S on our chest and hiding behind this mask that has been imposed on us has consequence. So let's talk about it, right, from a professional perspective. How does it show up? So we wear our mask at work. We wear our mask at home. They may show up a little bit differently, but the outcome, the consequences are often very similar. So just as in our personal lives, excuse me, we carry our masks into those professional lives. Excuse me. And it's why, like, when I'm working with a new client who comes to me, and typically they're coming to me to say, this is the area of my life that I really could use some support with, just professional. Excuse me, I'm taking a sip of water here. I really just need your help on the professional side, on the career development side. I have to warn them, like, you do know that in order to reach your greatest potential on the professional side, that you got to reach the greatest potential on the personal side. I let them know in advance that, we are going to have to go into some places that may feel a little bit uncomfortable initially. And without a doubt, I always get things and get comments like, oh, well, wait, now, I don't need you in my personal business. I just really need you to help me, get to the next level in my career. And I always ask the same question, and that is, help me understand how you separate the two. Because if you're struggling with self-confidence and knowing your value in your professional life, you're probably struggling in that same way with your personal life. If you are avoiding conflict in your personal life, you're probably taking that into the workplace and into the relationships outside of the home as well. And so really being able to combine both coaching and kind of this therapeutic way of consulting and counseling, it's much more of a holistic approach. And oftentimes the mask that we wear as a professional black woman, it comes through in the workplace as what's known or has been coined as code switching. And so really, in essence, you are learning to master the ability of leaving a lot of who you are at the door or in the parking lot. The very things that make you diverse, that make you unique, you are having to make this decision, whether it's consciously or not, about what you will and won't bring with you in an effort to assimilate, in an effort to be validated. And just remember the intersectionality of race and gender we spoke about. Like, how does it play into the corporate workplace where the traditional route of advancement, it usually looks like being a white male over the age of 45 or 50 and high cholesterol, right? So not only are you working against the gender role stereotypes, you're also working overtime. You're working double time to really overcome the stereotypes that are associated with you as being a black woman professional. And these stereotypes are being held by both male and female counterparts, right? So you're in this space where it's like, no, you cannot touch my hair. Yes, I really did develop that merger and acquisition strategy by myself, right? So when we code switch, we are really doing this risk assessment about, how likely is it that part of who I am is about to work against me, and how do I arm myself? How do I protect myself, right? And, you're doing this assessment, this Gantt chart that says, okay, my hair, does that work for me in this environment or against me, right? Does it help me? If the answer is no, okay, great, proceed to the next level. If the answer is yes, let's just stop and end here, right? So you learn to compromise and you learn to negotiate the things that are not negotiable, your identity, your values, your history, the very things that make you you. And the higher you climb, the more isolating it becomes, because you're often the one without that informal or formal support of a mentor or coach, that person who's decided, I'm going to invest in you, I'm not going to let you fail, that really decided to provide you with benefits that are immeasurable, right? That person who sees themselves in you or sees your potential, sometimes even before you see it, and pulls you to the side to give you those unspoken rules, right, to help decode the culture. Oftentimes, as African American women, we don't see that. We don't have that in the work environment. So again, we become more isolating. And honestly, you also begin to self-impose, right, this double duty with half the resources mentality. So I remember working, and this is in my, before my recovering efforts, in my Black Superwoman days, and I was working with another African American person in leadership, and we were working on this project, pulling double duty. I mean, we are in the conference room, the doors closed, head down. We are, doing everything we can to work harder and longer and be more efficient in our efforts. And we happened to be working on a project for a particular client group, and then there was another. There was another group of associates, of employees that were male counterparts, and they were working on a similar project but for a different client group. And at the end of the day, our counterparts, right, the male counterparts and Caucasian male counterparts actually delivered a very comparable solution for their client group to what we pulled together. But man, they did it quick. I mean, they did it faster. They did it without, at least seemingly from the outside looking in, without having to pull this double duty. And what we realized is that they actually went out and bought their ideation and bought the packaging and then brought it back in and they owned it and they presented it. And what we realized is that we couldn't do that. We were really afraid to take those same liberties, to spend that same money, to use those same resources, because from our experience, we truly believed that would have garnered a much different level of scrutiny. So this happens every single day in companies, but it's real. I'm not dismissing that this does not happen, and how often it happens, that we are held to a different standard maybe than some of our other counterparts. And it does happen every day, no doubt. But I will also tell you from experience that some of this is also self-imposed, and it's as a result of fear that we've experienced previously. So we start to negotiate again with the things that matter most, like our own self-care, our mental and emotional well-being. And we take the focus off of us and we put it on the health of the organization and what the perceived expectations of others are. So we're working late, we're taking work home, which is crazy because I don't bring home to work. But I will negotiate in a heartbeat, or I used to, family time by taking work home. And I will tell you one of the absolute best coaching sessions I ever had was with a previous boss, and it really kind of hurt my feelings. He was so direct. But I dialed in for a conference call while I was on vacation, and he said, you need to hang up, right? I really thought that I was going to be validated because that's what Superwomen do. We do it all, and we do it all well, and we even sacrifice our vacation time. And I remember this boss telling me, you need to hang up. You're on vacation. And he really kind of called me out. He was like, you're not that important that taking a day off for vacation or a week off for vacation, that it would be detrimental to the organization or that the doors of the organization would close. And it was a great lesson, one of many great lessons that I got from that boss that just said, stop it. You don't need that kind of external validation. So again, being a strong Black woman it's prideful. It's something that makes us unique. It's something that we've all strived and continue to strive to be, but it's how do you interpret that, right? Does it mean you are strong for everyone else and not yourself? Or does it mean that you are strong for self first? So being mindfulness, it's a state of active, open attention on the moment, on being in the present, without judging yourself, without judging those thoughts and those feelings. And it's really about this awakening experience and being in the moment. And so I mentioned earlier that we're so focused on others that we have never paid attention to what we're feeling. And we can tell you how Mama's doing, we can tell you how, the people at work are doing, but when I sit a client down and I ask them, hey, how are you doing? Go inside and give me a feeling word. I always get this blank stare. And then the response oftentimes becomes like, I don't know. I haven't thought about that before. So being mindful is, it's about going within. It's about allowing your mind to be still enough to experience what you are feeling. There is no way that you can be mindful and you're like in this state of depression or rumination or, you are anxious about what's going to happen in the next moment. We become afraid to just be still, just to stop and be in our moment. Sometimes it's because we're afraid to feel, and being still and not being able to distract ourselves with what everything else is going on and what everybody else is doing, it's going to require a space of vulnerability. It's going to require us to leave this comfort zone of chaos, a comfort zone of chaos. Let that sink in for a minute. And so sometimes we're like, I do mindfulness and I do get my me time in. It's my prayer time and that's my mindfulness time. No, that's only half of it, because if you're actively praying, your mind is not still. You're not focused on that internal energy. And, always racing to the next moment, you're never going to fully experience your gift. So Okay, here's the truth. The truth is that we all have stress. Yes, everybody has stress. I don't care your race, your color, your culture, your position. Like, you're going to have stress. It's just an inevitable part of life. But you can improve the way you manage it. You can improve the way and decide how you're going to respond to it. And being mindful and managing this approach to coping with stressful situations, it will save your life. According to the American Heart Association, African American women are twice as likely to die from things like coronary heart disease than Caucasian women, right? We are twice as likely to experience obesity, stroke, chronic illness, fatal diseases such as cancer and diabetes. We have a much greater exposure to chronic stress, and that breaks down our immune system and impacts our ability for our body to really, really protect itself from these chronic diseases. So you know what? When I'm working with clients that come in and they're talking about, I see this beautiful, African American woman that's sitting there who's trying to, do it all, do it effortlessly, not accept help, and she's pouring herself, into everything and everybody else's situation. You know what I ask? I ask a simple question, and that is that situation worth dying for? And that the truth is that it's not. I was talking to somebody as recently as this morning, and they were telling me about how they were in grad school, and they were in the middle of their testing and in the middle of trying to finish grad school, and they were diagnosed with a chronic illness that was going to require brain surgery. And she shared with me the process that she went through to negotiate on how and when she would have brain surgery, because she was too busy to do it for herself in that moment. I mean, those stories are countless. They're endless. And I, too, have had my own, experiences with that. I was diagnosed 5 years ago, and this is when I went into Superwoman recovery, is when I received a stage 3 diagnosis of cancer, and I walked into my job and said, hey, I got this cancer thing. I'm going to have to take some chemo, but it's business as usual. And when I think about that today, I think like, oh my God, God had to be sitting on, on that throne thinking, are you stupid? Like, are you for real? Did you really just say this is business as usual? But I felt like I had to keep it all together and keep things processing and keep things going, because somewhere in there I was being validated. So here's what I'm going to challenge you with. I'm going to challenge you with changing the S on your chest. Take the S off. It doesn't have to mean super. Let it mean self-care. And what does self-care look like? It means, first of all, self-disclose, right? Stop holding this in. Share your story with others. There is healing in that. There is power in that disclosure. I do it all the time in my sessions. And there used to be a time when I was not going to be that kind of vulnerable, and you were not going to know my business, and that was not going to be necessary. Self-disclose. Secure accountability partners, right? Tell somebody that you are working on self-care. So that way, when they see that you are working late or that you are not taking care of yourself, give them permission to safely hold you accountable. Seek and utilize available resources, right? Find a therapist, find, support groups, find, the mom blogs and the mom social media groups. Find those available resources. They exist. Ask for them. I think one of the most important things is going to be set boundaries, and don't just set them, protect them. That includes start saying yes to saying no. It's okay to say no or to say not now. I promise you, I have perfected it. Staying self-aware and applying mindfulness, knowing and paying attention to what your body is trying to tell you, to what those emotions are trying to get across to you, you have to know your body. Boundaries are a reflection. They are a reflection of, like, who are you and what are you about? And they let other people know what you're about and what you will and will not tolerate. It allows you to protect the things that are really the most important things. The benefits of changing that S on your chest are they are limitless. And if we could put bring the poll question up now, that would be great. But the benefits of self-care are, again, they improve your immune system. They save your life, basically. I would really like to end this presentation with something that is so powerful. This is a poem from someone who has just recently done a lot of work on who she is and becoming self-aware. Renita Walls is a local poet and artist who wrote this poem during her, what I think, very important therapeutic journey to healing and to self-awareness. And I asked Renita, she wrote this to herself for herself. And I asked for her very express permission to share this with you because I think it speaks volumes, and I think it summarizes everything that we've just talked about. And it goes like this. Hey, strong friend. I was just dropping in to tell you that you are enough. You are the keeper of loved ones' trust, but you don't trust yourself enough to let go and let God. When life gets hard, you get harder. Now there is more concrete than rose, burnt out with no energy to barter, trying to balance babies, bills, meals, and your chakras, has you losing your mind, picking up all the broken pieces for others, but for yourself you have no time to breathe deep, meditate, and repeat several times a week, rushing off to greet the next friend with the fake, oh, I'm fine smile, and the blank stare, I'm good grins. We know you hurt too, strong friend. Know your worth too, strong friend. Even if you can carry the burden, even if your back can bend, share the load with those who are willing. You deserve a break too, strong friend. You don't have to pretend. Take that mask off. Put that guard down. Release the light within. Recognize the scarcity caused by broken women and men, and free that hurt so your heart can mend. You deserve love too, strong friend, but you are too afraid to take the leap. Stop trying to control the fall, and you may just fly. There is beauty in the release, and in the faith that someone will catch you. Chances not taken will always end in defeat. You deserve protection too, strong friend. You matter too, strong friend. Who is meeting your needs while the bottom feeds? As you race at lightning speed to save the day, a superwoman who won't get out of your own way, blocking blessings that were meant for you, more concerned with feeling needed, always the first one to come through. But when you're coming for them, who's coming for you? And even when your true friends do, you are afraid to be vulnerable to allow them to. We know you need us too, strong friend, but let us be there for you, strong friend. No more closet cries and negative thoughts, no self-sabotaging and lonely walks. Self-love is a lifestyle. Happiness is a choice. Share your story and find your voice. Speak your truth. There is freedom in revealing. Your strength is inspiring, but we need you to know this to be true. The only person you owe anything to in this life is you. So stay strong, strong friend, but stay strong for you. I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for your participation. And if there is a minute left, I'm very happy to take questions. Okay, lots of comments, no questions that I can see. I am happy to take questions after the session. You can reach me by way of email at Stacy, S-T-A-C-Y, at thriveworks.com. Okay,
All right. Thank you so much, Stacy. And on behalf of NBMBAA, I would like to thank our presenter for the great program and for you, the audience, for your participation in today's event. This concludes today's program. Thank you and have a great day. And as just a reminder, a recording will be ready within 2 to 3 business days, and NBMBAA will send out an email with a link. Thank you so much and have a great day.